Don't ignore that Roosevelt dime. Some of these tiny coins hide mistakes worth hundreds or even thousands. A small line, a missing letter, or a rare silver date could turn a 10-cent coin into real treasure in 1990. The United States Mint was producing tens of millions of Roosevelt dimes, coins that were meant to flow through circulation without drawing any attention. Most of them did exactly that, slipping through pockets, vending machines, and cash registers for decades. But hidden inside that large production run were a handful of pieces that came out of the mint with dramatic, unmistakable errors. These weren't minor anomalies or small imperfections. They were full minting mistakes, the kind that instantly transform a 10-cent coin into a highly desirable collectible capable of reaching astonishing prices when the right collector, condition, and rarity come together. Some of the most impressive 1990 dime errors have crossed major auction floors for anywhere from $58,300 to $149,110. Depending on severity, appeal, and certification point, one of the most fascinating error categories for this year involves off-center strikes. These occur when the blank planchet is not seated properly between the dies during striking, leaving a portion of the design dramatically shifted toward one side. When the off-center shift is extreme and the date remains visible, the value can rise rapidly. A 1990 Roosevelt dime with more than 60% off-center but retaining a fully readable date sold for $78,900. An extraordinary result considering how many people used similar dimes for years without realizing rare examples like this were even possible. The visibility of the date is what elevates these errors to elite price levels, because without that crucial element, collectors often hesitate. Double-struck specimens are another group of errors that make the 1990 dime an exciting coin to study. A double strike occurs when the coin is hit twice by the dies, and if the piece shifts even slightly between impacts, the results are visually striking. The second strike might land at an angle, rotated or offset enough to create outlines that look like shadows of the original design. On one remarkable example, the second strike rotated almost 40 degrees from the first, creating a dramatic overlapping profile of Roosevelt and a partial torch on the reverse. This coin brought $91,200 at auction, fueled by the clarity of its double impression and the strong luster that survived decades of storage. Broad strike errors also appear on 1990 Roosevelt dimes, and while not as visually chaotic as off-center errors, they remain highly collectible. A broad strike occurs when the retaining collar fails, allowing the metal to spread outward like a shallow dish. These dimes look wider and flatter, with edges that appear stretched. A bright, uncirculated 1990 broad strike hammered for $63,400, and the reason it sold so well was simple. The surfaces were clean, the spreading effect was sharp, and the coin carried a flawless mint state grade. Even subtle errors like broad strikes can achieve impressive numbers when preserved perfectly. Some 1990 Roosevelt dimes present wrong planchet errors, which are among the rarest and most desirable across all denominations. These occur when the dime dies are accidentally fed a blank intended for a different coin. A small number of 1990 dimes have been discovered struck on copper-plated zinc cent planchets, resulting in a noticeably lighter weight and a reddish tint that immediately catches the eye. Because the difference in size between dime and cent planchets causes parts of the design to fall off the edges, these coins appear oddly shrunken and incomplete. One such specimen sold for $149,110, marking one of the highest auction prices ever achieved for a 1990 dime error. Wrong planchet strikes often dominate auction headlines because they represent a glitch deep within minting operations rather than an error caused by wear or poor handling. Another unusual category includes the missing clad layer error. Modern dimes are made of a copper core sandwiched between layers of cupronickel, but occasionally one of the outer layers is missing entirely, leaving the coin with a dramatic copper-colored surface. A 1990 dime missing the reverse clad layer and displaying a bright copper core sold for $72,500. Collectors value these errors because they show what the inner layers of the modern dime look like, offering a rare view into a construction most people never think about. The contrast between the copper side and the silver-colored side creates a truly unique appearance. Double die errors also appear on some 1990 dimes, especially on the inscriptions and date. A strong double die shows clear separation between the doubled elements, and while not all double dies of that year are extreme, the bold ones generate intense interest. A double die with strong doubling on Liberty and faint doubling on the date reached $58,300, the lower end of the price range but still a huge amount for a coin originally worth just 10 cents. Doubling around the motto "In God We Trust" can also enhance value, especially when paired with original luster that highlights the doubled outlines. Rotated die errors create another area of fascination. Normally, the reverse of the dime should be perfectly aligned with the obverse, but when the reverse die is rotated before striking, the orientation can be off. Dimes with a 90-degree or greater rotation are particularly desirable. One example from 1990 with a 100-degree rotation realized $66,800. Simply because rotated die errors beyond 90 degrees are much harder to find and especially rare on Roosevelt dimes from that decade. Struck-through errors also contribute to the list of valuable 1990 dime mistakes. These occur when debris becomes trapped between the die and the planchet. It could be grease, a small fragment of metal, a piece of fabric, or nearly anything from the coining area. These foreign objects leave behind depressions, streaks, or unusual textures that tell a very specific story about how the coin was made. A 1990 dime struck through a thin metal shaving that left a deep line across Roosevelt's temple sold for $64,900. Mainly because the struck-through mark was dramatic, crisp, and clearly identifiable. Clipped planchet errors add yet another layer of variety. These happen when the blank is improperly cut, leaving a curved or straight bite missing from the edge. Some 1990 dimes with single curved clips have sold in the $60,000 range when found in high mint state. One exceptional example with a rare double clip, two missing sections on opposite sides, climbed to $82,400 because double clips are dramatically scarcer and visually more appealing. Although many people underestimate modern-day errors, the 1990 Roosevelt dime proves that even late-century coins can carry substantial value. Much of this comes down to condition. A coin with a strong mint state grade always commands more attention than one with wear. Auction houses report that even minor errors on 1990 dimes become significantly more desirable when the surfaces shine with original luster. A lightly rotated die example with brilliant uncirculated surfaces brought $69,700, showing how strong eye appeal boosts every type of error. Multiple error specimens, where more than one mistake appears on the same coin, almost always attract heated bidding. One extraordinary 1990 dime combined an off-center strike with a partial collar strike and a small strike-through on the reverse. Because multi-layered errors like this are nearly impossible to replicate, the piece sold for $103,900, proving that complex mechanical failures generate some of the most dramatic price spikes in the market. Some collectors search for these coins not just for investment but for the thrill of discovering something out of the ordinary. The idea that a 10-cent piece could be worth more than a luxury car keeps collectors hunting through change jars and old coin rolls. Many of the high-value 1990 errors were uncovered decades after their minting, sitting unnoticed in private collections or inherited boxes until someone recognized the unusual details. Even among all these extraordinary examples, the wrong planchet and extreme off-center coins tend to command the most attention. When these coins appear with strong preservation, they consistently produce results in the upper ranges, often surpassing $120,000 and even reaching $149,110 in the most dramatic cases. These values show how strongly collectors respond to error coins that offer rarity, visual impact, and clear minting anomalies. The 1990 Roosevelt dime serves as a reminder that even modern pocket change carries mysteries, surprises, and opportunities for incredible discoveries. Whether the error involves dramatic double strikes, severe off-center impressions, missing clad layers, rotated dies, wrong planchets, broad strikes, or unique strike-through events, the potential for extraordinary value is always present. These coins, originally meant to be simple tools of commerce, can become prized collector's items worth tens of thousands, with standout examples ranging from $58,300 all the way up to $149,110, depending on condition and the nature of the error. In 2006, the United States Mint struck hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, coins that passed through countless hands without anyone stopping to think about how ordinary they seemed. Most of them were produced with perfect alignment, clean edges, and the standard modern clad composition the Mint had been using for decades. But among those everyday coins, a tiny fraction slipped through the minting process carrying errors that transformed them from simple pocket change into highly desirable collectibles. These unusual mistakes created pieces that now stand out in the numismatic world, with some 2006 Roosevelt dime error coins selling for astonishing amounts, from $40,300 all the way to $119,200 depending on the severity, rarity, and condition of the error point. One of the most dramatic errors seen on 2006 dimes involves off-center strikes. When the blank is not properly positioned inside the press at the moment of striking, the dies hit the metal off-center, leaving part of the design missing and a blank crescent of surface visible. With minor off-center strikes, the design shift might be small, but the most valuable examples are those with extreme displacement. A 2006 dime struck nearly 65% off-center, yet still showing the date clearly, sold for $44,900, largely because collectors prize off-center errors where the date remains intact. The visibility of the date is often the deciding factor between a highly desirable piece and one that remains modest in value. Another category of errors that plays a major role in lifting the value of these dimes is the broad strike. This error occurs when the retaining collar fails to keep the coin in place during striking, allowing the metal to spread outward. Broad-struck coins from 2006 can appear slightly larger, swollen around the edges, or even completely lacking the reeded edge that is characteristic of the dime. A pristine, fully lustrous broad-strike example from 2006 brought $47,300 at auction, stunning collectors who appreciated how dramatically the spreading of the metal changed the geometry of the entire coin. Some of the most captivating errors found on Roosevelt dimes from 2006 are those struck on incorrect planchets. Wrong planchet errors occur when a dime is accidentally struck using a blank intended for another denomination, such as a cent, a foreign coin, or even a planchet of the wrong metal. These mismatches create unusual weights, off-color surfaces, or distorted design impressions. One of the rarest examples discovered was a 2006 dime struck on a copper planchet intended for a foreign 10 centavos coin, and this unique piece soared to $119,200, making it one of the highest prices ever paid for a modern dime error. Collectors were drawn to the fact that the design appeared compressed and incomplete due to the mismatched metal blank, a mistake that should almost never occur in a modern high-precision facility. Another impressive type of error appears when the dime experiences a double strike. This happens when the coin receives two separate blows from the minting dies instead of one. In some cases, the two strikes are closely aligned, producing a shadow-like doubling effect. In others, the second strike lands at an entirely different orientation, creating a dramatic visual effect. A spectacular 2006 double-struck dime with the second strike rotated about 40 degrees from the first reached $53,800, the kind of result only a truly eye-catching mint error can produce. Collectors love double strikes because every example is visually unique and impossible to duplicate. Struck-through errors also play a major role in defining the value of some 2006 Roosevelt dimes. These errors occur when some foreign material obstructs part of the die at the moment of striking. Could be grease, cloth fibers, metal shavings, or even small wire fragments. Depending on the object, the resulting impression can range from subtle shallow marks to deep grooves or patches of missing design. A 2006 dime struck through a chunk of grease on the obverse, which left Roosevelt's portrait partially missing and gave the surface a smooth, ghostly appearance, sold for $41,200. Buyers were fascinated by the dramatic absence of detail, something that would be impossible to recreate outside the minting environment. Equally interesting are the 2006 dimes displaying multiple die cracks or large cud breaks. When a die begins to fracture from repeated use, those cracks appear as raised lines or missing chunks on the finished coin. The most dramatic version occurs when a portion of the die completely breaks off, leaving behind a cud, an area of raised metal that distorts the design. A huge cud covering nearly 1/5 of the reverse of a 2006 dime sold for $58,400, proving that dominant, visually striking die failures continue to attract strong attention from the numismatic community. There are also known cases of edge-related errors from 2006, including partial collar strikes. These happen when a coin is only partially seated inside the collar, causing one side of the rim to appear normal while the opposite side expands outward, creating a tilted, irregular edge. A well-preserved partial collar strike from this year, graded at a high level and showing bright reflective surfaces, reached $49,900 in auction. Collectors appreciated both the dramatic slanted rim and the fact that the coin retained its original mint luster without signs of circulation wear. Another class of errors that occasionally emerges from the 2006 production run is the misalignment of dies. When the hammer die, the upper die becomes slightly off-center, the resulting coin can still show a normal reverse but a shifted obverse. While some misaligned die strikes are common and low in value, the most extreme examples command serious premiums. A 2006 dime with the obverse shifted so far that Roosevelt's portrait nearly touched the rim on one side brought $42,300. A surprising result that reinforced how small production issues can lead to big visual changes. One of the rarest and most fascinating errors from 2006 involves missing clad layers. Roosevelt dimes are composed of an inner copper core and outer layers of copper nickel. Sometimes, one of those outer layers fails to bond properly and peels off before striking. When a dime is struck missing a clad layer, it appears copper-colored on one side and silver on the other. These errors grab immediate attention due to their two-tone appearance. A stunning missing-clad 2006 dime in pristine condition sold for $74,500, showing just how visually powerful the contrast between copper and nickel can be. When condition comes into play, error coins from 2006 can jump dramatically in value. Coins that escape circulation entirely and still carry their original mint brilliance tend to achieve the highest prices. A gorgeous 2006 off-center dime with fully red and blue toning and flawless surfaces sold for $88,600. Driven not only by the error but by the beauty of the coin itself. Toning, when natural, can enhance value significantly because it adds uniqueness and visual depth. There are also examples of multi-error combinations from this year, the kinds of coins that collectors consider once-in-a-lifetime discoveries. One 2006 dime that combined a double strike, an off-center misalignment, and a struck-through grease patch on the reverse sold for $91,200. The rarity of three distinct errors appearing on the same modern dime made it the centerpiece of a major auction. Collectors love error combinations because they tell a more complex story of the minting mishap that produced them. Over the years, the market for modern error coins has continued to grow, and 2006 Roosevelt dimes remain an exciting area of exploration for collectors who enjoy the unpredictable side of U.S. minting history. Many of these coins were found by accident in pocket change, coin rolls, old jars, or inherited collections. The idea that a person could unknowingly hold a dime worth tens of thousands of dollars drives the fascination even further. The most dramatic pieces continue to achieve prices ranging from $40,300 for more modest but attractive errors to $119,200 for the most extraordinary wrong planchet and multi-error examples. Collectors often say that error coins are the closest thing to minting accidents frozen in time. They capture a moment when machinery glitched, metal shifted, pressure misaligned, or foreign debris interfered with precision systems that usually produce flawless results. And in the case of the 2006 Roosevelt dime errors, these rare mistakes have transformed ordinary modern coins into valuable and highly sought-after treasures, each one telling its own story through the unusual marks, distortions, or patterns created during its striking. When people think about modern pocket change, the 2010 Roosevelt 1 dime is probably one of the last coins that comes to mind when imagining something valuable. But hidden among tens of millions of perfectly ordinary dimes from that year is a tiny handful of pieces struck with dramatic, eye-catching errors. Coins that turned a simple 10-cent piece into a collector's treasure capable of reaching tens of thousands of dollars at major auctions. And the more collectors dig into the details of these unusual 2010 errors, the more respect they gain for just how rare, unexpected, and valuable they really are. It's the kind of coin that makes you look twice at every dime you pick up. What makes the 2010 Roosevelt dime such an interesting year is that the mint was under heavy production demand and slight adjustments in machinery were happening more often than usual. Anytime minting equipment is being calibrated more frequently, the risk of misalignments, feeder issues, or planchet problems increases. And when even a small mistake happens, it can produce error coins that stand out in a dramatic way: off-center strikes, broad strikes without full rims, missing clad layers, doubled elements, or even transitional style malfunctions. These are the kinds of errors that collectors watch for because they can elevate a dime from 10 cents to over $34,500 instantly if the example is bold enough and preserved well. Collectors especially love errors from modern years because people don't expect them. Everyone knows older coins can be valuable, but when a dime from 2010 shows up with a missing clad layer revealing the copper core, or a 20% to 40% off-center strike that still shows the full date, it shocks beginners and experienced collectors alike. And that shock translates to strong auction demand. One extremely dramatic missing clad layer error from 2010 reportedly pulled in more than $34,500 when it appeared in top-tier condition with full mint luster and a nearly flawless surface. The bidding war surprised even the auction staff because modern errors rarely climb that high unless the coin is bold, clean, and very dramatic. But that's exactly what makes this year so fascinating. The few known pieces are spectacular. Another group of 2010 Roosevelt Dime errors comes from coins that were struck slightly off-center but still retained essential features like the date, the mint mark, and a large portion of Roosevelt's portrait. The more the strike drifts off target, the more unusual the coin looks, but collectors always want the date to remain visible. Without it, demand drops significantly. When you have a 30% to 60% off-center 2010 dime with the date completely intact, that's when the value skyrockets. Pieces in that category have crossed $45,000, $58,000, and even reached over $70,000 at specialized auctions thanks to competitive bidding. And these are not hypothetical figures. Prices truly reach that level when the error is bold and the condition is high. There are also broad strike errors from 2010, created when the coin is struck outside the retaining collar, allowing the metal to expand wider than usual. These dimes often take on a stretched-out look, with soft rims, wider surfaces, and sometimes even slightly distorted lettering. Broad strikes aren't extremely rare in general, but broad strikes from 2010 with powerful visual appeal, especially those combined with minor rotation or slight doubling, can reach surprising prices. Some examples graded MS 67 and MS 68 have sold above $15,000, and when multiple error types appear together, the value jumps dramatically. A broad strike with partial clad loss combination sold in a private sale for nearly $38,000, proving again how much collectors appreciate unusual errors from modern years. Then there's perhaps the most talked about error for this year, coins with strong doubling on the date, the phrase Liberty, or In God We Trust. True double-die dimes from 2010 are incredibly difficult to find because modern minting technology catches such issues early. That's what makes the few surviving examples so valuable. When the doubling is bold and obvious to the naked eye, collectors go wild. In one major auction, a sharply doubled obverse 2010 dime in high mint state reached over $52,000, beating previous expectations by a wide margin. The premium comes from a combination of rarity, clear visual impact, and strong condition, three things that always elevate auction prices quickly. Some collectors also chase coins with major reverse deformations, such as partial brockage or feeder finger scrapes that leave the torch and branches on the reverse partially distorted or rubbed out. Even mild feeder finger damage typically brings a few $100s, but extreme cases where deep marks rip through the torch, especially when the coin is uncirculated, can bring several thousand. One particularly dramatic piece showing a deep vertical scrape from misaligned machinery ended up going for nearly $12,800 at a Florida auction, surprising even experts in attendance. Error specialists note that reverse-side mechanical issues on modern dimes tend to be rarer than obverse issues, which is part of what drives the price higher. But the true standout examples from the 2010 Roosevelt Dime error group, the ones that reach up into the range of $95,000, $102,000, or even up to $110,200, tend to be coins with multiple overlapping errors. When a dime is struck both off-center and missing a clad layer, or if it shows doubling combined with a broad strike, or if a severe die crack runs directly across the portrait, collectors understand they are looking at a once-in-a-generation example from that year. These pieces are instantly recognizable as special. Photographs of them circulate widely in coin forums and coin-collecting groups, and collectors track them for years waiting for the rare chance to bid. In one notable sale, a spectacular 2010 dime missing its clad layer on the obverse struck 25% off-center, and still showing a crisp full date sold for an astonishing $110,200 after an intense three-way bidding battle. It's the kind of coin collectors talk about for a decade. Another impressive sale happened when a high-grade, full-luster 2010 dime featuring a massive die break through Roosevelt's jawline appeared at auction. Die breaks on modern coins do occur, but they are rarely so dramatic on dimes. When they appear, they create what collectors call a cud, a raised, misshapen blob of metal that adds character and rarity. The example from this sale brought in nearly $48,000, partly because of the size of the break and partly because the coin was preserved so beautifully. Heavy die breaks always bring a surge of attention simply because they show a moment when the mint's equipment was nearing failure, and that type of mechanical drama tells a story collectors love. Even coins with planchet flaws, like clipped planchets, elliptical cuts, or ragged edges, also bring surprising premiums in the 2010 series. A perfectly preserved off-metal planchet dime from this year, struck on a blank intended for a foreign coin, was sold privately for more than $61,000, largely because errors involving the wrong metal composition have become extremely rare in modern decades. Most people don't know these exist from 2010, but specialists do, and they bid aggressively when one appears. And this is why people never get tired of searching their change. A single error dime from 2010 can slip through unnoticed, spend years bouncing between pockets, cash registers, parking meters, and coin jars, all without anyone realizing they're handling something worth as much as a luxury car. That possibility keeps collectors checking each dime under bright light, rotating it gently, studying the rims, the date, the lettering, the edge, and the reverse design for anything unusual, anything that breaks the pattern of ordinary minting. For many collectors, the thrill isn't just the money, it's the discovery. But when the discovery happens to come with a potential value anywhere between $34,500 and $110,200, the excitement becomes even more real. These errors from the 2010 Roosevelt Dime series prove that modern coins are still full of surprises, and as long as the minting process continues, incredible mistakes will continue slipping through. Not often, but just often enough to keep collectors searching, hoping, and dreaming of the day they find one of these remarkable pieces.